Welcome to part 2 of my rewrite for Star Wars Episode 7, The Last Jedi. In this video, we're going to be tackling the second act of our rewrite, with the previous video covering Act 1 of this film. So, in a previous video, I talked about how there's usually only 3 acts in a film, and that depending on the person, the second act can be interpreted as being 2 acts because it's usually the longest portion of the plot, thereby giving the film 4 acts instead of the traditional 3. Or, you could just say that there are 3 acts in a film and that the second act is the longest. For this rewrite, I'm going to refer to The Last Jedi as having 4 acts, due to the runtime being 2 hours and 32 minutes. The second act of my rewrite is really where things are going to start escalating for our characters, which is why the second act is usually referred to as Rising Action. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I highly recommend that you guys go check that out. The link is in the description below. But just in case you don't have that kind of time, here's a quick recap. If you don't need the recap, you can skip to this time in the video. Qi'ra begins training in the ways of the Jedi under Luke Skywalker, and learns from the legendary Jedi Master that she is potentially one of the strongest Force users in the history of the galaxy, and this terrifies her. But thanks to Luke's guidance, Qi'ra is determined to use her power for good. FN-2187 is a loyal stormtrooper in the First Order who leads a team of Special Force troops known as Titan Squad. While on a mission to capture Resistance spies, FN's eyes are open to the barbaric brutality that the First Order rains down upon the innocent civilians of the galaxy. Captain Phasma begins to see signs of insubordination within the young lieutenant, and she benches FN-2187 until further notice. Through Kylo Ren, we discover that Supreme Leader Snoke's true identity is that of Darth Plagueis, the former master of Emperor Palpatine, who was thought to be dead years ago. Through Sith alchemy, Darth Plagueis was able to survive Palpatine's attempt to murder him, and he kept his survival a secret for years and years, only revealing himself after the Empire's fall. Snoke is disappointed with his apprentice's emotional weaknesses, and the Knights of Ren begin to show disfavor for Kylo Ren. With his father dead and his crewmates off helping Qi'ra train, Sam Solo decides to stick with General Leia and help his mom out by fighting the Resistance as a commander of an X-Wing squadron. But Sam's desire for glory drags the Resistance into ruin, as the First Order inflicts heavy casualties upon them, and as punishment, Leia demotes her son. Leia is later killed in one of the First Order's attacks, and she is succeeded by Admiral Ackbar, who believes that there is a traitor hiding in the ranks of the Resistance. Act 2. We open on FN-2187, sitting alone in the barracks. He's staring at the Stormtrooper helmet in his hands as he reflects on the catastrophe at Saria. TZ-1719 enters, and she takes his seat beside her commander. "Did you pass your psyche eval? We're friends, right?" "I mean, sure. For a while now, it's just been me, you, and TK-157. I'd like to think that we're more than just teammates, but you're my boss, and I'll always respect you, Lieutenant. How do you feel about what happened on Saria? We apprehended the targets. We did our job. The rest was up to Phasma and her men. What happened to the natives was out of our control." "Do you really believe that?" I'm not sure. Me neither. I haven't been able to sleep since that night. Every time I close my eyes, I hear their screams." Their conversation is interrupted by a call from Captain Phasma, who announces over the intercom that they are being reassigned to the Christoph system to help support General Hux, who is hunting down the Resistance fleet. We cut to the Resistance flagship, where Sam is drinking away his sorrow with Maz and her crew of pirates at the hangar. A few of the Resistance members are joining the pirates and giving a toast to the legendary Princess Leia Organa. There is something that Episode 9 did that I wish had been done back in Episode 8, and that is introducing us to some of the background characters of both the Resistance and the First Order to help flesh out the world and make it feel a little more lived in. Some of the Resistance members who are present during this toast will be Nien Nunb and all 5 members of Black Squadron. Kaden, the communications officer, will also be there, and so will Hooper Tenrix, the weapons specialist and armorer for the Resistance. The field medic, Twylep Nur, will be there with Beaumont Kin, the captain of the Resistance's ground troops, while Yipsit the mechanic will sit by C-3PO. Sam and the rest of the Resistance fighters began talking about Admiral Ackbar. There seems to be some division amongst the Resistance on how they feel about their new leader. Maz and Hooper gruffly complain about Ackbar's leadership style. They don't like his secrecy, his strict protocols, or his stuffy attitude, while Sam grumbles about Ackbar treating him like a child and not keeping him in the loop even though he's still a captain. Kaden reminds everyone that there could be a First Order spy hiding amongst the crew, and it's not fair to compare Ackbar to Leia. The Admiral is just trying to do what's best for the Resistance. He's served with Leia twice in military conflicts. He knows what he's doing. But Sam's already had a few drinks in, and he's a little buzzed. Sam tells his comrades that he doesn't buy that Ackbar's leadership style is what the Resistance needs right now. He rants that a good leader should always keep his team informed, but he's quickly silenced when Admiral Ackbar suddenly approaches Sam from behind with a group of armed Resistance guards. The Admiral tells Maz and her crew that he needs to ask them a couple of questions. The rest of the group disperses, but Sam sticks around, even though C-3PO keeps on prompting him to leave. Akbar is finally forced to give Sam an official order to return to his quarters. The young smuggler complies, but he gives Admiral Akbar the stink eye the entire time. Some time passes, and Sam will suddenly spot Maz stomping through the ship with the rest of her pirates following her. None of them look in the least bit happy. One of them shoulders C-3PO out of the way as he walks down the hall. The pirate will look at C-3PO and call him Shuta. I cannot comprehend how you kiss your mother with that mouth, but then again, she's probably just as filthy as you are. The pirate menacingly snarls in the droid's face, but he stands down when he notices Sam reach for his pistol as a warning gesture. Sam talks with Maz and finds out that Admiral Akbar suspects her and her crewmates of being traitors to the Resistance. Admiral Akbar's justification for blaming Maz is for no other reason than because she's a pirate, and that's why she can't be trusted. After hearing that offense, Maz pulled her support from the Resistance and is now preparing to venture back out on her own. Sam tries to convince Maz to stay and help him carry out a mutiny against Admiral Akbar, since they know that he doesn't have the full support of the Resistance. But Maz refuses to stay any longer, declaring that she joined the Resistance to get payback on the First Order for destroying her castle, and she satisfied that debt by helping destroy the Starkiller on Dantooine. Without Leia, the Resistance will fall apart within a week. This is why I never get involved in these kinds of affairs. Maz tries to persuade Sam into jumping ship and joining her crew, professing that he has no reason to stay now that his mother is dead. But Sam chooses to stay anyways. He believes that it would be an insult to his mother's memory if he abandoned the cause that she died for. Maz understands Sam's logic and wishes him good luck. Before boarding her ship, Sam and Maz will give each other one final wave of goodbye as Admiral Akbar joins Sam in the hangar. As the pirates leave, Akbar mumbles, "Good riddance," before walking away. This causes Sam to clench his fists and restrain himself from punching the Admiral. We cut back to Ahch-To, where Qi'ra and Kylo Ren have their second dyad together. This conversation will remain exactly the same as it is in the original film. After giving Qi'ra some fencing lessons with her lightsaber, Luke sits down with Qi'ra to have dinner with her, and he lights a campfire for them using a short blast of Force lightning. Pulling out a few books from his bag, Luke recounts the fall of the Republic and the Great Jedi Purge at the hands of Emperor Palpatine nearly 60 years ago. He also talks about the fall of the Old Republic, the extinction of the Sith Empire, Ben Solo's betrayal, and the destruction of Luke's Jedi Academy. Luke chronicles the numerous rises and falls of both the Jedi and the Sith throughout the history of the galaxy. Luke points out to Qi'ra that he noticed something in the history of the Jedi and the Sith that no one else has really paid attention to. There is a pattern in the Force's behavior. Whenever one religion, whether it be Jedi or Sith, gains more power over the other, the stronger religion will suddenly get culled by the mysterious hand of fate, and the weaker religion will gain more power in an effort to defeat its rival. But neither side can ever truly destroy the other, despite how hard they try. The Sith gain more power, then the Jedi defeat them. Then the Jedi gain more power, and the Sith defeat them. On and on this cycle continues. No matter how much effort is put into gaining spiritual dominance, the Force will always correct itself. It will always find a way to maintain the balance between the light and the dark, and ensure that one side of the Force does not reign supreme for too long. The Force works in mysterious ways, and it doesn't favor one side over the other like the Jedi and the Sith. Luke tells Qi'ra that it is pointless to continue training new generations of Jedi to help keep the balance of the Force, when the Force will already stabilize itself whenever it feels necessary to do so. Qi'ra's awakening in the Force is living proof of Luke's theory. The dark side of the Force is starting to gain more strength now, thanks to the actions of the First Order, and the dark side currently has two champions in the form of Supreme Leader Snoke and Kylo Ren. The light side only has one champion, Luke Skywalker. But to even itself out, the Force has granted the light side a second champion to rival Kylo Ren, and that rival is Qi'ra. This is why Luke agreed to train Qi'ra after he had sworn off taking on any more students. By training Qi'ra, Luke is following the will of the Force, and is helping re-establish equality between both sides of the Force's spectrum. Qi'ra asks Luke if he will take on more students after her, and Luke says no. Based on his track record, Luke feels like he causes more harm than good every time he tries to help. He tried to temper the dark side swelling up inside Ben, but it only pushed his nephew further into Snoke's arms. He tried to raise a new generation of Jedi to help protect the innocent, only for all the innocent Padawans to be cut down by Kylo Ren and his knights. He tried to keep his family intact, but in doing so, he ended up driving them further apart, with Han and Leia splitting up after Ben's fall to the dark side. So, Luke figures no one else will suffer from his mistakes if he just remains in hiding. Nobody will continue to get hurt because of his failures. This is the dilemma Luke faces in his character arc, the burden of failure. As an extension of Luke's character arc, Episode 8 is all about failure. That's the main theme of the entire film, and it's something that resonates at each of the characters' arcs. The lie in Luke's character arc is that he believes he will bring more harm than good to the people he cares about if he comes out of retirement. The ghost that supports this lie is that Luke, and by extension, the Jedi Order, have failed the galaxy multiple times. Luke failed to help Ben overcome his temptations, and as a result, his nephew turned to the dark side and all of his students were killed. Not to mention, the Force always corrects itself and balances itself out whenever one group of Force users becomes too dominant. Luke wants to believe that there is a chance that good can return to the galaxy. He wants Kira to be that beacon of hope, and he wants to be her teacher and her guide, but his pessimism and his depression are in the way, which brings us to Luke's need. His need is that Luke must learn to accept his own weaknesses and recognize that his mistakes are merely a part of him. They do not define him. Others can grow and succeed where Luke failed, but that does not make him unworthy or useless. Failure is a part of life, and you cannot grow if you refuse to accept it. One of the books that Luke brought catches Kira's eye. The book cover portrays a symbol of the Grey Jedi. Kira asks what a Grey Jedi is, and Luke tells her that a Grey Jedi is a Force wielder who studies and utilizes both the light and the dark side of the Force. The term was originally given to rogue Jedi who left the Jedi Order, but has now been broadened as someone who practices the Force in all of its aspects, without favoring either the dark or the light. But that lightning you just created, that's a Sith ability, right? Doesn't that make you a Grey Jedi? Luke gives Kira a mischievous smile. Technically, you're not wrong, but I still like to think of myself as a Jedi. I'm really just an old man who spends his retirement years whitening his perspective. An idea suddenly pops into Kira's head, and she beams with excitement. She asks Luke if it's possible to revive dormant memories out of someone's subconscious through Force telepathy. Luke believes it to be possible, but he's never tried it. Kira expresses her desire to try it on herself and see if she can learn who her parents are. Luke stops to study his apprentice for a moment. He sees so much of himself in her. A lonely orphan who has gone throughout their entire life, wondering who their parents were and if they ever truly loved them. He can't help but sympathize with Kira, and he agrees to help her, even though this is a really advanced Force technique that normally wouldn't be taught until the end of her training. Kira will sit for hours on the meditation ledge, with Luke coaching her through the complexities of Force telepathy. He helps her think back to her earliest memories as a child, but everything is too foggy and too distorted for Kira to make out. They even try using the Kyber crystal necklace Lor San Tekka gave Kira back in the Episode 7 rewrite to help sharpen her connection with the Force, but it's still not enough. After failing hours of practice, Kira becomes extremely frustrated and storms off, upset with herself. That fiery, hot-headed temper that's been with her since childhood, but was starting to disappear during her training, is now starting to resurface, and this troubles Luke. Kira tries to cool off by going for a walk around the island, and this is where we get the third conversation between Kira and Kylo Ren through their Force dyad. You know, that same scene that inspired all of the Ben Swallow memes. Now, with the context of Kira failing at learning who her parents were, this scene makes it all the more painful for Kira as she gets so mad that she starts to cry when she tells Kylo,
"You had a father who loved you. He gave a damn about you."
He then tells her,
"Let the past die. Kill it if you have to."
We cut back to the Christoph system, where the First Order is still pursuing the Resistance fleet. Captain Phasma's Star Destroyer enters the system and joins Hux's fleet. FN-2187 takes advantage of the commotion to journey down to the ship's brig, where all of the prisoners from Syria are being held. Most of the prisoners are passed out from exhaustion after having to endure hours of torturing and questioning from the stormtroopers. But there is one prisoner who is still awake, and FN-2187 approaches his cell. It's DJ. In this rewrite, DJ is going to be a Resistance spy rather than a codebreaker. DJ can still be a man of unscrupulous character who really dances around the edges of grey morality, but he's not a sellout. He still believes in freedom and is loyal to the Resistance cause. FN-2187 questions DJ on the Resistance, but he doesn't want to know the locations of their hidden bases, or the schedules of their supply routes, or anything else like that. What FN-2187 wants to know is what the Resistance is fighting for. What do they believe in? Why are they defying the First Order at every turn, when the First Order is just trying to re-establish the peace and prosperity that existed during the Imperial era? DJ is baffled by FN-2187's ignorance, and he enlightens the Stormtrooper on what it means to be a member of the Resistance. To see injustice sown across the galaxy, and choosing to stand up and do something about it when everyone else would rather turn away and pretend like it never happened. That's what it means to be a member of the Resistance. To be a champion of the downtrodden, a spark of hope, a light in the darkness. FN is confused. This is exactly what he thought the First Order was doing. Fighting for the people, fighting to keep justice within the galaxy. He was raised to believe that the discord in the galaxy came from the Rebel Alliance and its chaotic uprising against the Empire. But DJ explains that this isn't the case at all. You've been brainwashed, kid. Why don't you open up a history book and get all of your facts straight before you come talk to me about morality? FN 2187 leaves the brig, and as he rides up in the elevator, he begins to contemplate something. We see that the elevator is destined for the trooper's barracks. FN suddenly stops the elevator and redirects his destination to the offices belonging to the senior commanders of the First Order. He calls out the TK-157 through his intercom and tells his teammate to meet him outside Captain Phasma's office. FN rendezvous with TK as planned, and FN orders TK to bypass the security around Phasma's office and give him clearance. TK is a little nervous about this act of insubordination, but goes along with it when FN tells him that the intel inside is crucial to the war effort. FN keeps a lookout as TK slices through the padlock. Once they're inside, FN and TK begin scanning through all of Phasma's classified files using her clearance codes. To their surprise, the two stormtroopers uncover a dark secret. They come across records that detail lists and lists of children who were quote-unquote recruited by the First Order to serve in their military. All this time, the stormtroopers had been lied to. As the officer in charge of their training, Captain Phasma had always told her soldiers that they were children who had been adopted by the First Order after being orphaned by the rebellion during the Galactic Civil War, when in reality, the so-called orphans were stolen from their families at infancy by agents of the Fallen Empire and were indoctrinated into the First Order and raised to be mindless vessels of hatred and destruction. It takes a moment for the stormtroopers to recover from this revelation. When FN snaps back into reality, he commands TK to download copies of all those classified files before they leave Phasma's office and reset all of her security systems so that there was no trace of their presence. FN and TK stand silently in the elevator as they descend back down to the barracks. They're both still immobilized by the ugly truth that's been hiding under their noses all this time. TK turns to his lieutenant. What does this all mean? It means we've been fighting for the wrong side our entire lives. We cut back to Octo. Night has fallen over the island, and Kira is sleeping within her hut. I thought this would be a good time to insert that scene of Chewbacca enjoying a late night snack of roast pork, but never getting a chance to enjoy it because the porgs are guilt-tripping him with their puppy eyes. I feel like this moment of humor would help give this otherwise dark retelling of Episode 8 a breath of fresh air. What comes next will serve as the midpoint of our rewrite. The midpoint is the halfway mark in a story, and it is usually noticeable by a negative event that significantly affects the protagonist and makes life harder for them. Luke, who is bundled up inside his cloak, quietly sneaks into Kira's hut. He holds his hand out over his slumbering apprentice, and he uses force telepathy to enter her mind. In her current state of rest, we can see that it is much easier for Luke to sort through Kira's memories than it was for Kira to do so when she was awake. He's basically rewinding everything that's happened in Kira's lifetime. He sees Kira hanging out with Han Solo aboard the Millennium Falcon, and he acknowledges with a smile that Han was the first mentor Kira ever truly had. But he's too close to the present. Luke needs to go back further in time to find the answers that he's seeking. He sees Kira's mother selling her 5-year-old daughter to the blobfish on Endor. That's still too soon. Luke goes back further into the past. He sees Kira being born. Luke recognizes that there is something familiar about her mother. A thought comes into his head, and he's suddenly gripped by anxiety. Luke retracts himself from Kira's memories and rushes out of the hut. I need to be sure, Luke mumbles to himself. Luke approaches Chewbacca and hurriedly asks the Wookiee for permission to enter his mind and scan through his memories. Chewie's confused, but he trusts Luke, and he allows his old friend entry into his brain. Luke sorts through Chewie's memories and goes back in time to about 10 years after the fall of the Empire. He sees a young Han and Chewbacca hanging out in a casino. He sees Han giving a devilish smile to a woman across the gaming table. It's Kira's mother. Luke sees Han and Kira's mother going off into another room to share a night of passion together. Fast forward to Chewie standing outside Han and Leia's bedroom as he overhears the couple arguing and fighting over Han's affair. Han tells Leia that he's already taken care of the situation and has already made arrangements with Kira's mother to make sure that Kira is going to be raised far away from Coruscant. Han and Kira's mother have agreed that Kira will be raised by her mother without Han's help. Luke comes back to the present and exits out of Chewbacca's memories. He's mortified. Kira is not only the offspring of Han's faithlessness and is partially the reason why the Solo family split apart, she's also Luke's niece. She's a bastard who's been hidden away from her real family for years. Her mom had been compensated by Han to raise Kira on her own in order to cover up their scandal. Yet, she ended up selling her daughter off to scavengers all the same. Luke is overwhelmed by this revelation, and he hurries back into his hut, slamming the door shut behind him. Chewie watches on and grunts with concern. And that concludes Chapter 2 in my rewrite for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. If you like what you've seen so far, go ahead and show your support by liking this video and leaving a comment down below. If you want to know when Part 3 comes out, go ahead and subscribe so that you can stay up to date with this rewrite series. And I will see you guys next time. May the Force be with you.